Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So thanks everyone for coming. I see my class is here. For those of you who aren't in my class, my consumer insight class is now. We're starting class. A few announcements before we get started. So there will be no computers allowed during this talk. If you do take notes, you can write them on the board. Okay? We'll give this down for talk that's going to work best for us. Okay, as people come in, could you come to the front? Yeah, I think we're good, right? This is a large room.
I'm not going to cold call anybody.
Yeah, Becky is not as mean as I am, okay? She will not cold call. And I will not have the floor, so you're safe. Okay. All right, thanks everyone for coming. It's my pleasure to introduce Becky O'Grady, who is the president at Yoplait. Becky is a proud Wildcat. She graduated in 1990, so she's a Northwestern alum from undergrad. Since then, she went to Harvard Business School, and she has been at General Mills since 1998, right? So yeah, those first jobs. Think carefully, right? But General Mills is a company known for its loyalty to its employees and its employees' loyalty to General Mills. So she's been there for quite a while. She's held leadership positions at brands such as Cheerios, Progresso, of course now you know Yoplait, Betty Crocker. What else should you know? She's a founding member of Women in Marketing, which is a employee network for women in marketing, and she's done a lot of volunteer work in that space. So today she's going to be talking to us about brand building in the yogurt category, which I'm sure many of you have kind of observed as a very quickly evolving category, even though technically yogurt is a 5,000-year-old product, right? But there's a lot of interesting innovation and positioning and category management going on that Becky will talk to us about. But before she does that, I want to just show you a very quick preview of what we'll be doing on Monday. It's related to emotional branding. And you all have been thinking a lot about emotional branding in your assignments, I'm sure, right? So this is related to emotional branding. We'll watch this commercial on Monday again, but I thought I would show it now because it's actually a commercial that Becky led the production of. So I'm going to show this, and then Becky, you're welcome to share your thoughts on it. Whatever you want, if you have them. We will be talking about this
Sounds
at some
good.
length as it relates to emotional branding. So here you go.
Place in your heart.
Happy holidays. Well, there's the mystery in the Cheerios.
Oh, Cheerios is full of mystery. You don't think that people just eat these putting them in a bowl, do you? And that's not how they eat them anyway. Most kids play with them, they make stories up about them, they imagine them. We shot this great commercial with a grandma and a baby.
You know how much Grandma wanted to be here for your first Christmas? She came a long way. You see, Grandma lives way down here. Brian, your cousin, he's a little bit older than you. He lives here in Chicago.
You can build mystery as long as you believe in the story.
But no matter where Grandma lives, we'll always be together for Christmas.
Happy holidays from Cheerios.
You just ate Dallas.
We've moved from brands into...
All right, and that's the commercial is narrated by at the time, the president of Saatchi & Saatchi, who had a lot to do with its development. Okay, so emotional branding, think about it. And Becky, I think, will tell us probably a lot more about what it takes to manage a brand like Cheerios. Becky.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, it's. I was just saying, it's so neat to be here. I have not been here since I'm a walker. Sorry, so I'll have to come back and click, I guess. I haven't been on campus since 2005, and so just to see the change and everything going on here, and I loved, as I graduated in 1990, it was a long time ago, I loved my experience here, but I just have to tell you guys, soak it up, because you're around just a place and people that there's so much dynamic change going on. I think it's really exciting, so I hope you guys are just having a wonderful experience here. But I'm thrilled to be here. I guess we have a little bit over an hour together, and I'm used to fairly interactive sessions. So if you are confused about something, or if you have a question about something, raise your hand. I did go to HBS, which I'll talk about in a minute, and I did get cold called a lot, so I probably won't do that to you because I didn't really love that experience. But I'm thrilled to be here, and I look forward to spending some time with you. That commercial, which I didn't know that you guys were going to study, we got talking about it a little bit before, and I did work on that. The unique thing about Cheerios, I'm going off script here, but we'll talk about it, is I think Cheerios understood, and we understood on that brand, some of the things I'm going to talk about today before we really codified them as marketing principles. And by that I mean Cheerios is something that is in the DNA of America. And when I started working on that brand as a marketing manager, we would go to focus groups, which is kind of what we did at the time. Now you listen online and you do so much of it very differently. But at the time, you'd sit behind the glass, you'd sit in with consumers, and they would say, it's the American flag, it's apple pie, and it's Cheerios. I mean, Cheerios was that close to their hearts because it's, in this country, it's the first finger food. It's the first solid food, and you guys probably aren't at that life stage yet, that you give your child, right? So after breast milk and formula or whatever you choose to do, and maybe some rice formula, the first solid food you trust putting in your child's body is Cheerios. And so there is an emotional bond that goes over generations. And I'll talk about what the basic idea behind Cheerios is, but what we came to was Cheerios is about being there for the ones you love. And when you think about, it's a cereal. It's a breakfast cereal. It's something you pull off the shelf and put milk on in the morning. Not many products can get that deep and emotional with consumers, and probably until you have your own children and go through this will you have that kind of emotional connection with the brand. But because of that, we're able to do advertising like this. You can't just insert your brand in a story that you don't have a right to be a part of, because then it comes off as inauthentic and it really doesn't work. But Cheerios is one of those magical brands where you can do things like this. We did the adoption story, which was based on a true letter from a consumer when she went to adopt her twins from Russia. She gave them Cheerios, and it was one of the first ways they started communicating with each other, making patterns and eating the breakfast cereal. So anyway, it's just one of those brands that it's a beloved brand at General Mills, and just has a unique relationship with consumers that is sort of like no other. I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about me. As you know, I'm a Northwestern grad. I went to General Mills, so we'll come down here. I went to General Mills right out of college. I was fortunate enough that very late in their recruiting season, General Mills came on campus, and a great college placement advisor said to me, you really need to interview with this company. And I was headed straight for the advertising business and moving downtown Chicago. And I did my revisit to Minneapolis over my spring break and never looked back. I love the company, just very genuinely. I bleed blue, as I say. And so, feel free to ask me questions about General Mills as well. But I've had the privilege, really, of working on some of the greatest consumer brands, I think, that are around. And I am the good fortune of falling into a line of work that I love doing every day, so that's why I do it. I worked at General Mills for a couple of years. They sent me back to Harvard Business School to get my MBA. Had a great couple of years there. And then the only other thing I would say is I'm a mom. I have 2 children, 14 and 10-year-old. And my husband, I met at General Mills. And we are a little bit unique in that we are a dual career couple. He runs all of our sales force for all of General Mills globally. So we have kind of a crazy, busy life, the two of us, but that's kind of, just so you have a little background on who's talking to you, that's me. I want to tell you a little bit about General Mills, and this is not a public service announcement, I know it doesn't, but it's important because what I'm going to talk to you about in branding is really about knowing your consumer at a deep emotional level, and you need to know that that's not just a marketing theory, it's a philosophy that the company has. So this is us at a glance. If you don't know us, that's our main headquarters in Minneapolis. We have about 35,000 employees globally. We're about $15 billion in sales. I think we have a very strong and remarkable history, and clearly you guys will be familiar in a minute. I'll show you some of the brands that are General Mills that you might not necessarily recognize. But at the core of what we do, we have a mission which is about nourishing lives. And we believe it from the top on down, and there's really 3 pieces to that. We believe we're in the business of providing nourishing food. We believe we're in the business of nourishing the communities that we serve, and that means that every place that we have an office, a plant, a sales office, you name it. We are very involved in the communities there, and we are one of the, I think it's less than 5% of companies who give 5% of our earnings pre-tax to charity. So that's a big part of what we do. And we really believe that increasingly, because of our global reach, taking care of the planet that we share and making sure that our practices are sustainable is really important. So that is in the DNA of our company. And these are our values. And every company, so I just actually had we had lunch with a graduate class, and they were asking me about General Mills values. And our CEO, who is just a magnificent guy, a couple of years ago really dedicated himself to reimagining the values for General Mills and really bringing them front and center. And so these are them. You know, they're about great brands, innovation, people, and performance. You know, you would probably see that on the walls and the halls of most, hopefully, great companies in this country. But the one that he personally wrote and said, you know what, this is the most important thing, is that we do the right thing all the time. And what I would tell you is, if you are going to venture into the world of marketing, change is the new normal. And one of the things that you're going to need is a very strong moral compass, because things are going to happen that you can't predict, and you're going to need to figure out how to respond to them. And a lot of that comes from what you sort of personally hold true about what is the right thing to do. Because marketing, you know, goes all the way from snake oil salesman, right, to serving a consumer need. And, you know, where are you going to fall in between? And do you work for an organization that is always about doing the right thing that's in consumers' interests? The premise I would give you is that if you always put the consumer first and serve their needs, then you won't need to worry about selling products and growing your brand, because you'll be truly doing what's in their best interests, and you'll be successful. So that's at the core of what we do. Just a little bit about our culture. I told you that we're obviously recognized widely for being an employer of choice. We're very involved in our communities and our planet. But one of the ways that manifests itself is that 80% of our employees volunteer. And it's part of what we believe, that as a corporate citizen, you also need to be a very active citizen in your community. And so giving back is a big part of what we do. So enough about the company, but it hopefully will help you understand the mindset that we bring to brand building. These are some of our great brands. Some of them you may recognize as being U.S. brands. Increasingly, General Mills is a global company. And so the interesting thing for me, especially working on a yogurt business, yogurt is actually the largest global category that General Mills competes in. And only as of July of last year did we buy our way into having a stake in that global business. And so just having brands and resources and thinking from across the world has been a really interesting and recent change for me in my role. But these are some of the really precious brands that we have, and our job every day is to figure out how to make them more and more meaningful to consumers so that they resonate. So you guys tracking so far? Yeah? Okay. So here's what I would tell you. Over my 20-some years in marketing, and I bring up some of these examples just to make you realize how different it is. And I don't feel that old being 20 years out. Now, I recognize that that's probably as long as most of you have been alive, so that feels really old to you. But when I started at General Mills, we did not have computers. That was just 1990. Think about that. There was no internet. Okay? We had a huge mainframe kind of in the middle of the floor that we would turn on to pull Nielsen data. We had a fax machine. We thought that was really progressive. We could fax storyboards and ideas back and forth to the agency in New York. If you think about in 20 years how technology has changed, then you'll start to understand that from where we started, and I'll go into more depth on this, but it was really command and control. And that honestly was kind of it was what the boardroom looked like 20 years ago. General Mills has always been a progressive company, so there were more women at lower ranks, but certainly in the C-suite, that's pretty much what it looked like. And now we live in a world where the consumer controls the conversation, right? So how is that different? We lived in an interruption model, right? It was, hey, consumer, who was, a woman 25 to 54, this is the brief we'd give our agency. Now we call it, female 25 to 54 with a pulse was kind of what we were going after. And we were going to blast messaging at her, right? Interrupt, stop her from doing, make her pay attention. And she only had a handful of TV channels, and there were only a handful of ways to reach her, and so you could interrupt. Today, we live in service to the consumer. She's got a million choices. She has a million things going on, and I say she because in the grocery business, in the food business, the primary grocery shopper is still overwhelmingly women, and so we still talk a lot about women, although you'll see an interesting ad that we just did on Go-Gurt targeting dads. But now it's about how do we serve her. So very much, that mindset has changed. So now we're truly consumer marketers. A couple of quotes, all right? It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones that are most responsive to change. That's the mindset, that's the culture that you're walking into. I like this one best. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less, okay? We're living in a world where it is so volatile that you have to throw yourself into the experience of where is my consumer at? We talk a lot at General Mills about we're really proud about the fact that we've got 30 million consumers in our database and we're one of the leading digital marketers. But in the same breath, we remind ourselves as far ahead of our competition as we think we are, we're probably still 10 steps behind our consumer. So we're constantly thinking about how do we evolve and how do we change to catch up. Okay, I think next I'm going to go, I'm trying to remember if I go to video now. Let's play it, if I do. Oh, no, okay. These are that's right, I'm going to show you a couple of focus areas that speak to how marketing has changed. And then I'll walk you through kind of the ladder of how we think about taking, consumer insights and how that translates all the way to in-market activation. And so two of the things that were principles that we're really talking about and trying to drive into the culture are number one being consumer-centric, which is really what I've been talking about, and the other one is experimentation. The reality is, if you're in a really good relationship with someone, you should be able to anticipate what they're going to say. You should know what you say, how they're going to react to that. But that's on a one-to-one, very personal connection, and you don't sometimes get it right? Well, when you're talking to millions of consumers, even as close as you might be to the pulse of that consumer, the reality is you're probably not always going to get your messaging right. And so this notion that we used to go through these huge timelines to create things and then throw them out there, now it's really about experimentation. And so just a couple of examples. This is a brand that was launched over the last couple of years. And it's basically a parfait kind of yogurt. It's a sweet treat positioning, and it's a small business, but this kind of shows you, when we first started out, we had this idea that we were going to launch this Sweet Delights brand, and this is literally in the upper left-hand corner. That's what the package looked like, right? And we had taken that through, our big standardized consumer testing, and it did pretty well. And then the marketing manager at the time got this idea. They said, I think we should play around with this a little bit. I don't think it's ready for prime time. And they moved through several iterations, and basically they just kept throwing it on shelves at a local Target. And what they found was, pink and calling it sweet was sort of obvious in the concept, but it didn't really communicate what the benefit was, which was chocolate, right? The news in yogurt was, the breakthrough idea was, I want chocolate. There wasn't any indulgent chocolate yogurt. And while we maybe had those flavors here, we weren't communicating in a way that was very clear. And then the other thing on that package, which is a little bit hard to see here, is it was chocolate at 100 calories. And simplifying and what might seem like a really simple change, just through iterating, helped the concept and the product when we launched it be far more successful in market than what we would have gone out with, which is kind of expected and what you typically experience from yogurt. So that's one example. Here's another example. This is concept testing. We do this kind of thing all the time online. You're part of a panel. What do you think of this concept? And it usually has a picture and a price and those kinds of things. And one of the things that we can understand from that testing is where the heat is, right? So what do consumers like about it? What don't they like about it? And what you see circled is what really came to the top. People understood with the brand benefit of with the brand name of Fiber One and with the brand benefit that we were touting that it was going to be high in fiber, but what they were concerned about was, would the product taste good, right? And so this is the package and the product that ultimately launched, right? Much more indulgent. Fiber is implicit in the idea. Downplay that, really put taste front and center. And so it's just this notion, they're two small examples, but it's an example of how we really spend less time perfecting and more time iterating to get to great. The other two ideas I want to talk about is, and again, these are sort of the principles that we're really trying to drive into the culture right now, is one is the bias towards speed. Things are moving so quickly, right? We can sit in an office and endlessly debate, and I always say to my team, you know, it really doesn't matter how many hours in the conference room you spent talking about this idea. All that matters is, did the consumer see anything new or remarkable today about our brands? If they didn't, we might as well all go home, right? Because to the consumer, nothing changed. But we've spent hours and hours talking about it and challenging it. So bias towards speed and pushing the boundaries. I'm going to show you something that when it happened, and this was a couple of years ago, when the brand team did this, and they really did this under the radar screen, was something that I will tell you a lot of people looked at and they said, that's really dumb. But watch it and see what you think.
California, CHNG. Stay close. Driver, I need you to cut that engine and place those hands outside the window. Now.
Hey, man, is there a problem? Yeah, man, are we on America's favorite Getting Hassled by the Man show?
I actually don't know the name of the show. What is the name of this show, anyways? Is that the name?
They're back and off to the craziest desert festival in the world.
Swimming pool, here we go.
Cheech. Chong.
Is it raining?
Cheech and Chong's Magic Brownie Adventure. Join them in their quest to deliver thousands of magic brownies to Flaming Pool.
Flaming poles. Wow, man. Flaming pole? Flaming pole. Flaming pole. You eat magic brownies? Everybody gets naked?
I want to go, Mommy.
Ryan, you want to sit up here with Dad?
Yeah.
That's such an awesome band, guy. What's in the back?
Brownies. Yeah, magic brownies.
Whoa!
It's okay, man. I got his throwing thing. What? He'll have to come back and get this.
A story of revenge.
I knew we'd run into him eventually.
America.
I don't know what the world is going to.
Robots.
He told me.
I don't know how, man.
Chicks. Angry guy. French-speaking dogs. Action. And brownies. Chewy, chocolatey brownies. That are 90 calories and high in fiber.
What?
Fiber, because now that you're getting older, you need a new kind of magic from your brownie.
This is the weirdest movie ever.
Fiber One 90-calorie brownies. Taste the magic of fiber.
Get high on fiber. Get rid of your frowny. Turn them upside down.
Okay, so, I mean, I don't know what you think of that. Do you even know who Cheech and Chong are? Yeah, sort of. The demographic and the target that eat Fiber One are people who are a lot older than you, that have concerns about their digestion, right? And we now make great tasting products that help them digest more easily. And so the brand team had this wild-haired idea, and they took $25,000, and they got Cheech and Chong, and they went and they shot this video, and they thought, we'll throw this online. And before they knew it, they had about 3 million consumers who picked up on it and started passing it along, because to their generation, and this again was a couple of years ago, it was a really breakthrough thing at the time. I think it took a ton of courage. It had nothing to do, I showed you the concept, right? And how we changed the package. It had nothing to do with what they were doing from a mass market perspective. That wasn't their national advertising. But it was an insight that somebody had about maybe these consumers would have a sense of humor about what this product could do, and it would be breakthrough. And so they tried it, and I give them a ton of credit because it helped propel that launch to being over $100 million in year one from a business size, and they've never looked back. It's one of our fastest growing businesses, and it actually now, that bar business is bigger than the cereal business, which it's based on. So just an interesting example of experiment. You know, the idea that try something, take a risk, and it could have flopped, right? And hopefully we would have celebrated it and talked about it as much as General Mills, at General Mills as we have, had that been the case. But you know, I would tell you that's not the typical thing we do, but kind of interesting. So the point is, as marketers, what I talk to my team about all the time is the time is now. We got to move. Consumers are moving, and we've got to get with that and continue to evolve. So this is the General Mills framework, if you will, in terms of how we think about marketing to consumers. And it starts with culture. And I know I talked about the corporate culture at the beginning and why that was important. I'll talk to you about the marketing culture and how we're trying to change that. It's really based on consumer insights, and that's what this class is all about, right? It's about really understanding the DNA of your consumer, what's important to them, serving their needs. Then out of that, you create an idea. Ideas are magic. The process to get to them is completely messy. You know a great one when you see it, and when you have it, you ride it like crazy, and then you got to activate it, breakthrough activation. I just kind of showed you an example of that. And then I'll talk to you about the idea of ongoing inspiration, because the reality is when you get inside of a company or a brand, you can start to group think. And you can all start to talk to each other and think about things in the same way. And so one of the things you need to do as a marketer is constantly challenge yourself to get outside of what you're currently doing. That's really easy in a university setting, right? Every day you're running into new people and you've got speakers coming in. But when you're in the 9-to-5, you know, Minneapolis headquarters building, how do we continue to inspire ourselves to think differently? So let's start with the culture. You know, I think it, you know, as you probably believe or heard me say earlier, I think it starts and ends with culture. I think this is a great quote: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Clearly, it's not to say the strategy isn't important. We need to make choices. We need to be focused. We need to have a clear strategy. But at the end of the day, you can't get anything done if your culture is not in the right place. And I'll tell you, this is where we were. This was our culture. Sit in a room, perfect. Talk to the agency, fax it over, email it over, fax it back, perfect. Iterations, do the board, right? Launch it, and then wait. See what the consumer has to say. That's where we were. The environment is changing. Everything we're doing, we're testing, we're learning, we're throwing things online, we're getting feedback, we're testing, we're iterating, and then we launch big, okay? So that mindset has changed completely inside our four walls. There was reason for this. You know, kind of the old school model was you had to get it right because there was so much risk on the line in terms of what we were doing. 10 years ago, not even 20 years ago when I started, this was a big national launch. You were going to launch a product, right? And you'd get all of your teams in a room and you'd say, we need 2 commercials this year. We need to drop some coupons. That's what an FSI is. We might do a print ad or 2. And then we're going to do some stuff at our customers, at the stores that you guys shop at. We're going to do some trade deals. And that was your plan. And I don't mean to minimize. I mean, I don't know what these guys were doing the whole time. I don't mean to minimize the work. And I was probably part of that group too, you know. But today, it's just completely different. I mean, this is what the go-to-market plans look like. And 365 days a year, we're monitoring, we're iterating, we're changing what we're saying to consumers about the experience. And so we just have to fundamentally approach it and think about it differently. And so, you know, if I haven't hit this enough, this is about, you know, get out of your office, stop talking about it, get into the market, and do it. And so what we say at General Mills is that every brand builder needs to listen daily to our consumers, okay? There are so many tools. And I show this to marketers when they come in the building. You know, it's so funny. You as consumers out in the world today, you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you know, you're texting, you're doing all those things. And somehow we come in a office structure and we stop thinking that that's a way that we can learn and get insight from our consumers. We think we need to field some study or we need to have some focus groups. You know, you just go on Facebook, you know, we've got a couple million fans on Facebook, on Yoplait. Go out and talk to them. Ask them what they think. We have a proprietary listening tool at General Mills called Horton. Every day on their laptops, they're getting what are consumers calling in about, what do they think, you can follow up with them. So daily listening has to be part of a change in our approach. Social listening, again, just an example of, put something out there, hear what consumers say, what are they reacting to, what do they like about the product, quickly iterate and change it in market. So, if you haven't gotten the theme, I think change is the new norm, and encouraging folks, and again, I know it's probably different in a university setting where it's like, oh, I want to get it right, I want to get the right answer. It doesn't work that way in marketing anymore. Get it 80% right, get it out there, and learn from your consumers. So again, start with culture. That's the biggest and hardest thing we've had to change at General Mills, okay? People want to have the right answer. I think then, if you've got that in place, and the reason I wanted to start there is because I don't think that's a given. But if you have that in place, then it's about, do you know how to go out and really listen to your consumer, and what is a good consumer insight? So what I'm going to share with you are a couple of examples where we had brands that were doing very well in the marketplace, and I would tell you we had fairly generic consumer insights. And hopefully what you'll see in these examples is just by changing them and getting to a place that we think is more meaningful, it's unlocked a lot of creativity on the part of our creative partners. And so, this was a good insight, right? This is you're probably not familiar with this. This is a European weight management cereal. It competes with Special K globally. It's called Fitness. It's been a great success for us around the globe. And, here is this woman, and she's looking for ways to manage her weight and feel good about herself, right? That's true. That's their target. It's better than women 25 to 54 with a pulse. It's a little bit more specific. But this is what great looks like, okay? When they started talking to their consumers, women want to manage their weight. That's a pretty universal insight. But what they found is that the marker for how the women that they were marketing to understood whether or not they were managing their weight was their clothes. When they zipped up their pants or they zipped up their skirt, they knew. Clothes don't lie. You can fit into your jeans or you can't. It's not about getting on a scale. It's about how your clothes fit. And so the global Saatchi & Saatchi team leveraged that to come up with an entire campaign that brought that to life. And so let's take a look at that.
Zip up whenever you want and fit into whatever you love. Zip up all year long. You can with Fitness. Fitness is whole grain. Not all cereals are. And whole grain helps you keep your mind. Zip after zip, day after day. Keep on zipping with whole grain Fitness.
So you can see how that insight, getting to that level of specificity and just really understanding that consumer, now you have a great, really interesting, provocative ad and a very ownable visual mnemonic that is differentiated, and when consumers see that, they know that it's fitness. So that's one example. Here's another one. So gluten intolerance. There's a very small percentage of people who are actually gluten intolerant, but there's a lot more people who think they might be, okay? And so it's fact. It's true, right? So what's interesting about that is it's a market that historically General Mills would have said too small, we don't want to go after. But over time, what we've realized with a couple people being really smart and taking risks and experimenting is, as I said, there's actually kind of this larger group that's really interested in it. And by the way, when you have gluten intolerance, you feel fairly isolated from the people around you. So this is a fairly generic insight. It's very true, but she wishes she could eat a wider variety of foods, but her gluten intolerance limits her choices. This is more emotional. This is a great insight, right? How does it make her feel? She feels like an outsider. She wants to experience her normal brands. She wants to put things on the table. She wants to share things with people. She doesn't want to have the special food. She wants to be a part of what everyone else is experiencing. And that represents for her a return to normalcy, right? So how does that, how do you take those ideas and take them from a really, I think, they're not bad, they're not a generic level, but really to sort of an insightful, intuitive level that really resonates and makes your marketing more remarkable. I would say there's a couple ways. First is you got to immerse yourself with consumers, okay? You're not going to get great insights by sitting behind these desks. You're only going to get it when you get out with whoever your target is, live among them, talk to them. You know, if you work at General Mills, one of the things you always have is a stack of product coupons in your bag or your purse. Why? Because whenever I'm at the grocery store, I cannot help myself, but I stand in front of the yogurt section, and as people buy things, I stop them and I say, why did you do that? I'm sorry, I know it's really weird, let me introduce myself, why did you do that? And here are some coupons. And you'd be amazed at what people will tell you, right? Force yourself to get out of your space and listen and talk and know what your consumers are doing. We have people go and live with consumers for periods of time. We film consumers. We ask consumers to film themselves, obviously not doing anything inappropriate. But it's a key part of how you get to understand your consumer. Monitor their activities. There's so much now. And this actually, I mean, this has almost become more of a curse than a blessing. But there's so much information. I mean, you can throw questions out there. You can look at what people are doing. And so what we have now in the office on the floor is literally real-time scrolls of where the heat is online, of conversation about our brand, what they're talking about, what they're thinking, how it's different by different parts of the country. And you got to mine it because it's all there, right? But you have to be actively looking for it. And think about what is it that you're solving, what problem is it that you're solving, right? You know, she's got a lot of choices. She's got a lot going on in her life. So how do you really, again, operate in service to her? I think this is a great example. Thanksgiving. In this country, it's a make or break holiday. It's a time you bring the family together, and you make that meal one day a year. You're not an expert at that meal. You don't, you know, you shop for it in advance. You plan for it. You take the whole, it's probably one of the few days in this country that people literally take hours to prepare their meal, and they feel good about doing that. But what happens is they get halfway through it, and crap, they don't remember. Like, I don't know, oops, the turkey's frozen. What do I do now? Or I don't remember. How long am I supposed to bake it? And so just this idea that Betty Crocker, who has been this trusted, you know, advisor in the world of baking for decades, that you could contact her, right? She doesn't need to be in your home, but you and she doesn't need to be in your cookbook on your shelf. You could actually text her on Thanksgiving and say, it's 11 o'clock, my turkey's frozen, what do I do? And we would respond, right? That's a brand in service to the consumer. Here's another one. Who knew? Okay, the baking category. Have any of you walked the baking aisle? Do you even know what I'm talking about? Like brownies, cake mixes. Why would you, right? I mean, interesting fact. Millennials, for whatever reason, are returning to baking. Whether it's the economy, and it's something that they can do as a family that is low cost, whether it's, you know, time that they want to be spending with their kids. One of the interesting insights about this mom is she wants her kids, obviously, to have nutritious choices, but she really is invested in them having fun. So products that celebrate the joy of cooking and the joy of eating and are fun for her children that she feels good about. I mean, this is clearly a very treat-oriented product. But, you know, that really resonates with her. And so that was the idea behind, well,
Pardon me. What are you doing looking like that? What part of the dress code don't you understand?
I don't care about dress codes. It's what's inside that matters. Look.
Oh. Bollocks, he's full of it.
Fundamentals. It's what's inside that matters.
So, you know, just not traditional at all for, you know, a stodgy, you know, cake, brownie aisle to be marketing like that. So again, thinking about how do you be in service to her and deliver a benefit that really does something for her. Those are very maybe functional examples, right? We have brands, Yoplait being one of them, and I talked about Cheerios and the emotional resonance of Cheerios. We have brands that can reach consumers on a very different kind of level. And Save Lives to Save Lives is a program, and I was telling this story a little bit earlier, but about 18 years ago, a woman at our Carson, California manufacturing facility had breast cancer, and she was at a very advanced stage. And the entire manufacturing plant rallied around her care. And they organized a walk and raised a lot of money for her and her family. And she survived, which is a wonderful thing. And it sort of made its way from Carson, California back to Minneapolis. And some very smart and creative people at the time said, you know, we market our brands to a lot of women. This is a great story. We should think about getting more involved in the breast cancer cause. And that truly is how Yoplait got involved in breast cancer 18 years ago. Fast forward now, everybody's involved in breast cancer, right? Pink washing, everybody's doing it. But at the time, it really started from a very personal place. And one of the reasons that we're able to still talk to our consumers in a very authentic way about breast cancer and do everything that we do around breast cancer every year is because we've been incredibly engaged in that conversation for a long period of time. Box tops. Another really important platform for us. Again, probably not something that you guys are all that familiar with, or maybe you are from grade school. Maybe you were a box tops kid. When I was growing up, box tops didn't exist. Campbell's soup labels existed. That program is basically all but defunct now, right? General Mills, I don't know, 15 years ago decided, you know, we're going to start putting these little things on our packages that are worth 10 cents and having kids collect them and schools collect them, and we're going to put the money back in schools for playgrounds and other things that kids can enjoy. This has become, what started out as kind of a promotional program, now, given the money that we've given, has become a great platform to reach moms on that takes our brands to a completely different emotional level than, you know, what's on sale this week, Cheerios versus, you know, something else. Here's another brand, and again, given the life stage that you're at, some of these things may not resonate with you quite as much, but Pillsbury is a brand that is just synonymous with bringing people around and creating magical memories, especially around the holidays. And so here's just an interesting thing that the brand team did, again, to try and take the emotional connection with consumers higher. So again, you know, one of the things I would encourage you to think about from an insight perspective is, who are you talking to? Get to know that person as a person in the same way you would a friend, and really understand what matters to her, what's in her life, where does she shop, what does she like, what are her stresses, because only in that way, I think, can you truly be in service to her, and then she will opt into your brand, right, or your experience. The idea that you're going to push it on someone doesn't fly anymore, right? So that's where you have to get to let them to opt in. Once you have done all of that, right, you've created the culture that's very iterative and fast and in tune, you've developed an insight that you think really resonates with consumers, your work isn't done. I mean, we spend a lot of time talking about, and it's Kristen, and she lives in this town, and she's got 2 kids, and that's all great, but that's back to that comment of, yeah, has Kristen ever seen the ad? You got to develop an idea, right? So hopefully that inspires your entire team to come together, and I'm just going to show you, I'm not going to show you ads, but I'm going to show you sort of the idea as crystallized as it can possibly be as we walk around the halls and talk to each other. When you work on a brand, do you understand what this brand is really about? So I'll just show you a couple of pictures. Green Giant, probably a brand that it's near and dear to us, right? Because the Green Giant Valley and where Green Giant started is in Minnesota. But just an old but wonderfully nostalgic brand for consumers. They've unlocked tremendous growth the last couple of years because the idea is their product is as nutritious as fresh. Did you know that fresh vegetables, between the time that they're harvested, they actually make it to their shelf and into your grocery store? Could be weeks, right? Green Giant vegetables picked and within 48 hours, frozen. Locks in more nutrients, it's fresher, it's healthier. That insight, communicating that to consumers, has unlocked tons of growth because people want to have vegetables on hand. They want to feed their kids vegetables, but they're expensive. You buy them, they go bad, you don't use them. Having that reassurance that frozen is nutritious as fresh for this new generation of moms has been huge in terms of unlocking growth for that brand. It's an idea. Nature Valley, the energy bar nature intended. They started marketing off of this 10 years ago, and they've had unbelievable growth, right? This notion that the brand is only made from natural ingredients. It's not like a pharmacy brand. There's all kinds of bars now. You go in the pharmacy section, and it's this bar and that bar, and you turn it over, and it's got all kinds of crazy ingredients in it. But if you're interested in protein or some kind of a, very specific health benefit, that might be okay for you, but that's not what Nature Valley is about. It's about being the energy bar that nature intended. Everything they do, 100% natural. You can be assured when you buy those products that it's going to reflect and live up to that positioning. Great idea. And then my favorite is about Cheerios, right? And Cheerios is about taking care of your heart. The cholesterol benefit, when we unlocked that, right? We'd always been about finger food, and it's a wonderful emotional moment. I told you that's the DNA of the brand. But when did the growth really start on that brand? It started when we started marketing the cholesterol benefit to people who, 2-year-olds are wonderful, but they don't consume a lot of cereal, right? It's a wonderful magic moment. 50 plus, who's worried about their heart, consume a lot of cereal. But it wasn't about hitting them over the head with Cheerios can lower your cholesterol. We did some of that, but the insight of take care of yourself so you can be there for the ones you love, that is uniquely Cheerios, right? And that's how we've marketed the cholesterol benefit in a way that nobody else can, because nobody else has that permission. So those are just some examples of how you take insights into really meaningful idea areas. I'm wrapping up here. What I would say is then you got to activate in a breakthrough way, right? So you've got a great insight, you've got a great idea. I've shown you some, maybe stretching the bounds for General Mills, interesting activations. This is what we think about. What's the message? When is she looking for it? Where is she going to be receptive to it? And how do you get it to her? So, just again, some examples. Cookies, right? Mint chocolate chip. This is what I do every day, guys. So, these are not hard problems, but I don't know if you want a mint chocolate chip cookie. Do you want it to be green with chocolate chips in it, or, look like a regular chocolate chip cookie with mint pieces in it? Go ask her the question, right? I guess I'll go back on that. Shock her with a visual that engages her and allows her to have a point of view to decide what the cookie should look like. And then she's probably more interested in buying it. Here's an interesting activation. I talked about the fact that our primary grocery shopper is primarily female, right? But one of the things that we noticed was this trend of more stay-at-home dads, obviously. And not that they're huge in terms of the numbers, but the idea of it is actually really appealing to moms. The idea that dads are really engaged with their kids and want to help out with planning their kids' meals and lunches and take some accountability and responsibility in that. And so this was the situation. We wanted to advertise Go-Gurt, which is a yogurt brand, portable yogurt brand, to the gatekeeper. And we had two different ideas. One featured a mom, one featured a dad, same kitchen. And we basically went online and we shot both ads, same time, pretty cheaply, just 2 different cast members. Went online, put it out there, got feedback. Resoundingly this one.
Slurpably fun and a good source of calcium. Dads who get it, get Go-Gurt.
So just a little bit of an unexpected twist, you know, from bringing it to the marketplace that, that helped it be more remarkable. Okay. Where you market. One of the things that we're really trying to experiment with is getting closer to consumers in terms of where the idea activates, right? And so this is Chex Mix. What you might not know is that actually more cereal in the September, October, November, December timeframe for Chex is consumed as a snack than it is in the bowl. So 4 months out of the year, a third of the year, if we don't convince people to make Party Mix, which is a old-fashioned recipe that's been around for 30 years, if we don't do that, we don't make the year on Chex. And so this is an idea that was really all about localizing and trying to find brand champions in the community who make the best Chex Mix. And you'd be surprised and amazed at how many people want to engage in that. Not only did people start making their own recipes, they actually started campaigning for themselves, putting things online, because it was all about who could get the most votes. And we spent $5,000 on this idea, and we got 1.8 million impressions because it resonated and it was remarkable in the space that we were, you know, where consumers were that we were talking to. So, you know, again, just another interesting example. And the last one I'll give you is Larabar. Larabar is a brand that we acquired about 5 years ago from a woman who had this idea to start this vegan, gluten-free, you know, and the list goes on of health credentials, line of bars. And she basically started making them, you know, out of her garage. And the way that she got brand awareness was by going to events where her brand champion was. And so whether they were, you know, outdoor sampling events or ski events or, you know, rock climbing events or you name it. And she built this brand literally person by person in a very remarkable way. She hired ambassadors. She basically pays them or paid them a very nominal fee, but they were so passionate about the brand that she gave them free product and just said, find 50 of your friends and start telling them about this, and she would ship it to their house. And that's how she got this business going. Again, just reaching out to people in a totally remarkable and breakthrough way. You know, we have since acquired the business from her. She made a lot of money in that transaction, but really because she found a way. I mean, the product is terrific, but she found a remarkable way to get into people's lives. Okay, so that's the idea. And then the last piece of the ladder is just ongoing inspiration. So again, you know, if you've got the insight that translates to an idea to really remarkable activation, what I would say is, how do you as a marketer continue to inspire yourself to be creative and push the boundaries? And so there's a couple ways we do that at General Mills. We have something called First Wednesday, and the first Wednesday of every month, we expect our entire marketing community, so that means marketing, consumer insights, R&D, anybody who touches our products to gather. We have a large auditorium on campus to gather for an hour and a half and come be inspired. And we bring in the best of the best. This is just a sample of the last 12 months who we've had in our office. We don't pay these people to come in. They are willing to come in and share their stories, and what they really want to do is come in. They're smart, right? They know that as we're asking them to share their story, and they're not competitors to ours, they then turn around and spend the day with us. They want to know, yeah, I run Miller Coors. What's interesting about the way you market Cheerios or Yoplait or Progresso soup that I should take back and think about for Miller Coors? Totally different consumer, but maybe there's an insight here. So all these people come through, and we talk with them. We engage in community debate with them about how they're marketing their brands, what's working, what's not. They're amazingly transparent, and their stories are really interesting. You know, we had the CEO of Crocs come in and talk about how Crocs was this like huge success, and then the business completely flattened out. A lot of competitors came into the space. They repositioned the style of the brand, and you know, sales up 31%. We had Snack in the Face come in, talk about their story. I mean, it's different from what we do and the way we do it, but it's really important to constantly challenge yourself. What about, you know, Lego and what they're trying to do to get into a very different space in terms of going after girls, because Lego historically has been a very male, boy-targeted product. Comfort marketing, another great example. We bring these all up at our first Wednesdays. This is the idea of nostalgic brands that you remember, right? Bringing back old slogans, old pieces of music, old copy to try and reinvigorate that nostalgia. The brand that's doing it really well right now that you guys are probably seeing is Oreo. Have you seen any of the Oreo stuff? I mean, the whole notion of 100 years old, the Oreo twist, I mean, it is so product focused, but really drawing on the heritage and just the wonderful credentials that they have as a brand. So anyway, those are the kinds of people that we bring in to continue to inspire us, because we think that's really important. So wrapping up here, this is, you know, this is sort of what we believe at General Mills. We don't do this perfectly every day, but, you know, again, I think it starts with a culture that and a mindset that really wants to engage the consumer. You've got to have the right insight, because if you're not close to your consumer, you don't know what they want, you can't serve them. A brilliant idea that you don't develop on your own, usually you develop in partnership with all of your teams, breakthrough activation, and then keeping yourself fresh and inspiring as you go to market. I'll leave you with this last thought, and it's this idea that you can tell someone all day long what you want them to believe, but they'll probably forget, right? You can show them something and they might remember, but the idea that I think we're all trying to get to as marketers is engage them, involve them, and they'll understand and they'll be your advocate for life. And that, in essence, is, I think, how we have changed and how we're now trying to market our brands. So that's my wrap up of my formal comments. I don't know if you want to do some Q&A or...
Yeah, that was great. Let's thank Becky for that. There were so many nice tie-ins, I think, between what you presented and what we're talking about in class, goals, and all kinds of stuff. So we have about 15 minutes for questions. Questions?
Yes.
Hi. I'm assuming that you work with a lot of PR and advertising agencies to distribute all of those messages. I was wondering how involved your marketing team is with those agencies and how much oversight you have over the creative or the strategy that they're developing, and how you measure how successful those campaigns are.
Okay, so to the first question, highly, highly, highly involved. I mean, our marketers, we agree on kind of the strategic area and the insight and the, you know, the target that we're going after and what the objectives of the campaign are. And we trust our creative agencies to develop the ideas. But, you know, when I talked about that test, iterate, test, iterate, test, iterate, hopefully they're developing lots of ideas, and then jointly we're pushing those back into the market and learning about them. And our marketers and our consumer insights people are involved the whole way. So it really is a team effort. It's not something that we sort of send them a memo and they put it out there and we never see it again and hope that it works. So high level of engagement. And I would say that not all of the work is done outside of the building. That's maybe one of the unique things about General Mills. We have a lot of our own internal marketing and PR and even, you know, film department that creates stuff for us. We've got a whole Betty Crocker Kitchens where we curate tons of culinary creative. We produce things. We've got a studio where we film stuff. So in many times we're actually developing the content internally, but so highly involved. In terms of measurement, you know, we almost measure too much to a fault. We've got very precise and overly cranked analytical models that you can almost get paralyzed by. There's so much data, and we're analyzing things so much. What I would tell you is that in my experience, when you're around a good idea, you don't need the analytics. In other words, you will see the jump immediately. We will see whether it's Facebook response or even jump in Nielsen data, just consumer movement or calls from the plants, the orders are shooting up. I mean, when a good idea goes into market, you almost don't need those analytical tools. Clearly, we use them and we evaluate, and it helps us make the way we spend our money and execute a market better. But if you've got a great idea, it shows itself. Okay? Yes.
I have a question about Greek yogurt.
Yes.
Because I haven't seen Yoplait really involved in that arena very much. As far as I know, you just have 2 flavors. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that wrong? The honey and the strawberry?
Yep. That's not right, but you're right. We're not involved. Yep.
So my question is that the whole Greek yogurt excitement came on pretty quickly, and I jumped on the bandwagon, but it was very powerful, and everybody just loved Greek yogurt all of a sudden.
Yes.
You have this very traditional Yoplait yogurt.
Yep.
What was your philosophy internally of, should we enter this new market? Should we stay with what
Yep.
we're doing now?
So great question. So just to provide context for people who don't involve themselves in the yogurt market very much, yogurt is a $6.5 billion category. It's the second largest category in the U.S. that we compete in. It's the largest category General Mills globally competes in. And what I would tell you is that things happen in categories in food, but typically they're not revolutionary, right? And so if you look at the top 10 foods that consumers have eaten for the last 25 years, it's basically the same list of foods. I mean, maybe pizza and hot dogs have traded places, but it really has not changed. And actually, the only change is that yogurt has moved up in the top 10 listed foods for consumer consumption. When Greek came along, which was it's been in the market for a long time, like a lot of things. There's a ton of things in yogurt right now. Kefir, they're sort of out there, but it was incredibly small. And it was really the brilliance, and I give him a ton of credit, of Chobani coming in and really defining what that would be in a way that consumers really resonated, and that thing went like this. So today, Greek yogurt is about 35% of the category. And initially, honestly, we looked at it and we weren't sure if it was a fad. We weren't sure how big it was going to be. But it has become very clear that it's going to be a major part of the category. And so we are moving very quickly, and you're seeing things in the marketplace right now. And there may only be 2 flavors where you shop, but you're going to see more from us. Because I think that our brand, we know we have the highest loyalty in the category, we have the highest penetration in the category, and our consumers are, obviously coming to us in droves saying, where's Yoplait in Greek yogurt? And so that will be something that you see us respond to. It's not something that I look at and am particularly proud that we did what we should have done in terms of listening and being on it. And we have, I think we've got some catching up to do, but I hope that the power of our brand and the way we come to it uniquely will help us be successful in the end. I'll tell you an interesting story as well. The light segment in the category, which, for you guys, you've grown up with light yogurt, but light yogurts didn't exist originally. And Dannon was actually the brand that pioneered light yogurt. And it took us a matter of, 5 years or so. But by getting the right product and the right positioning and the right advertising, we got ourselves to a great place there. So I feel like we've got our work cut out ahead of us, but we're on it. So.
I actually have a follow-up question to that. How much control do you have sort of on the marketing side in terms of product development, product attributes, what the product actually is? What's that relationship like?
For me personally?
What's the conversation like between marketing, communications, marketing, and product development?
Okay, so at General Mills, we're brand managers. So we don't just do marketing. The philosophy at General Mills is you own the P&L. So even as an assistant marketing manager right out of the gates, I worked on everything from working with our package design people to our finance people to what the P&L would look like, to our trade marketing people to how the sales force would execute. A huge part of the job is working with R&D to develop the actual product, do the consumer testing. So that's a great point. At some companies, marketing is a separate function that primarily relates to advertising and consumer communication. At General Mills, it's 360 brand management. So my responsibility really at the end of the day in the role I'm currently in is to manage the entire P&L of the business. So.
And so when you're generating ideas, you talk about the idea part.
Yep.
Those ideas can be product ideas.
Oh, absolutely. That's a huge part of what we do. We biannually sit down all the way up to our CEO and talk about what the product strategies are, whether they're renovation, things we're going to do differently with an existing product, to new product ideas, to, yep. So that's all part of what we do. Yep. Yes.
Can I ask what your undergraduate degree was and kind of what you took most from Northwestern that applied to your career?
Good question. So I was a comm studies major. I was a great sampler in undergrad. I mean, I took some sociology classes, I took some, econ classes. I took sort of enough to fulfill my requirement, but I sampled across kind of a lot of different schools. This kind of curriculum, we were talking about this, wasn't available when I was here, and quite frankly, I think it would have been in my sweet spot. So it was really through trial and error of summer internships where I got the experiences to start to figure out what it was I thought I wanted to do. And it was through campus leadership things and, different organizations that I worked on that I kind of figured out that marketing advertising was kind of the area that I wanted to be in. And it was less related to the coursework that I was taking and probably more related to the experience I was having outside the classroom that really helped me figure it out. I didn't have any family experience. My dad's a physician, my mom's a teacher. My entire family works in nonprofit and that kind of thing. I didn't have business people in my family. I had never heard of brand management until I got a call from the advisor at the placement center who said, I think you should interview for this job. So it was really fortunate, or I was fortunate, that I had some experiences that pointed me in that direction. I did, through comm studies and through a professor, I actually did an internship at J. Walter Thompson. And that was probably, it wasn't technically a field study. I was meeting with the field study people this morning. It wasn't that, but I was able to work it out as part of a curriculum of something I was interested in. And so a little bit haphazard. So you guys are getting you're getting great exposure to stuff that I just didn't even know existed. Yeah. Yes?
Do you have any tips for someone who's trying to get into the consumer side of the business instead of the agency, and any tips you personally have that maybe you did or didn't do throughout your career?
So you mean breaking in from undergrad? Or from graduate school? I think it starts with, you got to see who's out there hiring, right? So I would get as much experience on your resume as you possibly can. Because what's going to stop, looking at it from a recruiting lens, because I recruit at Harvard, I've done recruiting in a lot of places, because at General Mills it's a little bit different. We have an HR function that does recruiting, but it's actually the marketers who go out and read the resumes and decide who's going to be on the interview list. And what we look for is, it's obviously great GPA and all those things that people are looking for, but has this person shown that they have some experience that would lead us to believe that they really want to do this? And so whether it's a business thing you've done on your own or an internship, even if it's unpaid. I have people say, can I come work at General Mills for 5 days? You don't have to pay me. Just let me follow you around. Talk somebody into that and get it on your resume. It'll stop a recruiter and they'll say, okay, they know what they're talking about. That's why they're interested in this space. It's just about trying to get an experience however you can get it. And I don't think it needs to be 3 months or, I would just leverage every professor, parent, friend, family friend you can to get something on your resume, and then just doggedly pursue it. Basically when we go on campuses to recruit, it's who shows up at the briefings, who stays and asks questions, who writes us letters, who's persistent, and who's got something on their resume that looks like it relates. Honestly, that's kind of what it comes down to. Okay.
You spoke about communicating with the consumer via Facebook, gathering insights that way.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, how much weight do you put to the negative comments that people put in, or the nasty comments that people say about a brand or something?
You know what? That has been the hardest thing, right? Because first of all, have you guys ever heard the expression Minnesota nice? If you live in Minneapolis or Minnesota, it's just it's classic in the culture. Nobody says anything. Nobody wants to say anything offensive. And so the notion that people would come on our Facebook page and say something negative about our brand was really hard for us to digest. And how do we feel about that? And I would say we've gone from being really concerned about that to being more concerned if we don't have that kind of dialogue, then we're basically suppressing and turning a blind eye to what our consumers are really thinking. And so we've kind of run to the other side of the ship and said, okay, we need to embrace that. We need to encourage that. Now I would tell you, certainly if something really heats up, we find a place on our website to say, if you want to talk about this, this is where this conversation is going on, because not every consumer that comes to our Facebook page wants to hear about that. Sometimes it's a very vocal minority. And you want to hear that conversation, you want to respond to that conversation, you certainly don't want to shut it down, because that's the fastest way you can alienate that consumer. And by the way, that consumer might have 100,000 consumers that follow them, right? So you want to embrace it, and you want to hear it, because it is a legitimate point of view about that person's brand experience. And then you have to decide whether or not that is an experience that you have to address more formally by changing some marketing or some product things, or whether you say, just thank you for your input, here's why we do it this way, and we're going to continue to do it that way. People contact us about things all the time that we're not going to do necessarily, but we'll tell them why. And I think that debate is healthy.
I'm kind of on that point. How do you screen on your Facebook or Twitter the negative comments? Do you delete some, or do you decide like which ones you're going to keep on the site and which ones you're going to delete, or how does that work?
So the world has changed so fast. I mean, you think about the fact that we didn't have people monitoring our Facebook sites 5 years ago, right? And so I would say it's a real-time effort to understand when we think something is offensive and has crossed the line, and quite frankly, we don't want we just don't want to engage in that particular topic. And I gave the example earlier when I was talking with the other group. We had a situation on Yoplait about a year ago where, because we're very involved in the breast cancer cause, Susan G. Komen for the Cure made a decision that they were no longer going to fund Planned Parenthood because of the stance on abortion. And it created, they made that decision in isolation and never consulted us as their leading sponsor nationally, which was problematic. But B, it put us in the center of a raging debate about abortion, which is nothing that we wanted to be a part of. And some of that got pretty nasty. And quite frankly, there were we understood that there were points of view on both sides of the debate. We wanted to hear that, but there was some stuff that was just downright inappropriate. And that's where you have to use your moral compass and say, it's not that I'm not listening to you, but I'm not going to engage on that level. So some of that stuff, candidly, yeah, we did remove. But we did allow both sides of that debate to be heard, and we were very forthright in, here's what we think. And within 48 hours, we had put a lot of, we had used our influence as a partner with them to say, we don't think you've made the right decision. And they, as you may or may not know, they retracted. And the woman who was heading Susan G. Komen at the time, not Nancy Brinker, who's Susan's sister, but the woman that she had hired, was let go, and they reversed their decision. But it's a fine line. I would say, by and large, though, we want to engage in the debate. When we think it's offensive, because I think, as you all know and have experienced, people will do things online that they wouldn't do in person. And that's where, just as a human being, you have to say, you know what, I'm not going to go there, but I'll listen to what you have to say. Yeah.
And like your biggest strength and what are?
Okay. So I started on Pop Secret microwave popcorn. That was my first job. And it could have been any brand. But basically I worked in our snacks division and worked on new products and marketing and advertising and those kinds of things. And the track at General Mills is you basically rotate from brand to brand and have different kinds of experience, whether it's established or new products or more customer oriented is kind of the general track that you're on. So that was my experience, and I've worked across pretty much every product portfolio that we have domestically. I have not worked internationally. I've not relocated, and I haven't done cross-functional moves into like sales and things like that. But some people do. But that's been my experience. I think two things will make you successful. One is I say this to people all the time because I'm kind of a simplifier. there is the what of the job, right? It's like walking and chewing gum at the same time. Like you have to be able to do the basic quantitative, just the blocking and tackling of the position. You have to be able to understand the Nielsen stuff and understand what a good advertising strategy is. And you learn that. Nobody teaches you that in school. We're not expecting people to come out of school and know how to do that. But you have to learn how to do the content of the job. But a huge piece of being successful over the long term is how you do it. And we have a lot of highly, highly qualified people that come in our doors from the best programs across the country, and you'd be amazed at, and hopefully we screen a lot of this out, but you'd be amazed at how limited their ability is to relate to other people. And at the end of the day, this is a people business. I have to inspire people to generate ideas. You know what? When I go to Saatchi & Saatchi in New York, I know I'm paying them a lot of money, but if those creatives aren't inspired, I'm going to get the worst creatives working on my business, and I'm going to get crappy ideas back. I have to go there and help them understand why something as, pedantic as, Yoplait yogurt is fun and exciting and get creativity out of them. And so I think over time, the thing that helps you be successful is, can you lead people? Can you get them excited about whatever it is? Are you passionate about what it is you're trying to do? And can you get them excited? Because the higher you go in an organization, the less you actually do. I mean, it's sort of the dirty little secret, right? I'm not in that many copy meetings. I'm not in that many decision-making meetings where we're actually doing the day-to-day. I'm relying on a lot of other people to get that done. And so you gotta inspire and have people excited and turn them loose. So many times we bring people in and it's like, you can play, but it's only in this box, right? I mean, let people bring their strengths. And yeah, sometimes they're gonna make mistakes, and you have to live with that. But I'd much rather see somebody, just run after something. I mean, some of that stuff I showed you, it's like, as I said, like that brownie, that magic brownie thing. I mean, the people that did that, that's not a very General Mills thing, Midwestern, Minneapolis, nice thing to do, right? Those people, and they threw it out there, and they took a risk. So I think some of that, is what makes people successful at General Mills. Okay?
Any further questions? We'll do last question.
Okay.
Okay, I kind of have a two-part question.
2 parts, okay.
Going back to when you're sort of involved in a controversial debate.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit confused, because you manage so many different brands. When you have to issue a public statement, are you representative of all of those brands? And my second question is, if one specific brand is involved in something controversial, how does that affect other brands that they're associated?
Okay, good question. So I actually don't publicly speak on behalf of Yoplait. So what we have is, because of the world that we operate in, we have people who are trained, who are our voice, our public voice on Facebook and things like that. And their names are out there, and you can contact them and speak with them, and they're the voice of Yoplait. I am not the public voice of the brand. So just so you sort of understand that. And so, when we need to make decisions about the stand we're going to take, trust me, there's a lot of people in the room. And depending on how big the decision is, it potentially elevates all the way up to our CEO. It just depends on what the circumstance is. And in this particular, the example I was giving you, it was a pretty highly visible situation. And so we didn't take it to our CEO, but I was involved in what we were going to communicate out to consumers. But it's the marketing teams, it's the legal teams, it's the sales teams, because our customers, by the way, are seeing this stuff. And so we got to have an answer for, Safeway and SuperValu and Walmart, and they're wondering what's going on. So I'm engaged, but I'm not the voice of the brand. Does that answer kind of question number one? And then in terms of, so I think of brand Yoplait, and anything that would happen on brand Yoplait would be in my purview. And I would be very concerned about, would someone over here be concerned about their purchase of Go-Gurt? We didn't see a lot of crossover effects of that, but I certainly within my portfolio am very concerned about that. The interesting thing about General Mills is it's a house of brands. And so most people walking down the street don't know that the same people that make Yoplait make Cheerios. It's not that we're hiding it, it's just not something that we market very directly to you. And so we see fewer crossover effects from one portfolio of our business if it's not sharing the same brand. Like you wouldn't call up Nature Valley and say, I saw this thing on Yoplait, because most people don't connect the two as being part of the same company. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Really interesting.